My family said I'd miss them. Funny how quiet it got when I finally didn't. Last Saturday, my backyard looked like something out of a Hallmark commercial. Blue streamers hanging from the fence, paper plates lined up neatly, a cheap sheet cake from Walmart that said, Level 10 Caleb in pixel letters. It was supposed to be a good day. My son turned 10, double digits. He'd been counting down for weeks. I'd cleaned the patio the night before, scrubbed the grill, borrowed folding chairs from our neighbor Mr. Jensen, who even promised to lend me his extra cooler just in case we go big. I remember thinking, maybe this year will be different. You see, my family isn't bad. They're just the kind of people who show up when there's something to gain. And a kid's birthday, that's not networking material. But my mom promised. So did my brother and my sister. Mom texted me on Thursday. Wouldn't miss it. Saturday came with that Midwest summer smell. Sunscreen, grass, and a hint of charcoal from the neighbor's BBQ. 6 of Caleb's classmates ran around the yard, kicking soccer balls, their laughter bouncing off the fence like sunlight. I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for that familiar buzz. Nothing. I told myself maybe they were running late. Traffic, overslept. Classic Reed family timing. By 2:00 p.m., I'd already opened the group chat 3 times, staring at the same gray silence. No on our way, no so sorry, stuck in traffic. Just digital ghosts. At 2:30, I asked the pizza guy to wait an extra minute before heading back. Family's coming, I said, pretending confidence. He glanced behind me at the chaos of kids and shrugged. You're good, ma'am. This looks like a party already. I smiled back. That automatic muscle memory kind of smile. The kind women wear when they're breaking but still have to serve cake. When the candles flickered and the kids started chanting, Make a Wish, I watched my son close his eyes, his small hands cupped like prayer. For a second, I thought about whispering a wish too. Please, just let someone care enough to show up. He blew out all 10 candles in one breath, proud as ever. The kids cheered. I clapped along, pretending my heart wasn't tightening with every second of silence from my phone. I slipped into the kitchen under the excuse of cutting the cake. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. My phone buzzed then, finally. A message from my mom. Don't be dramatic, it's just a kid's party. Just that. No sorry, no happy birthday, nothing. I read it twice, because the first time, my brain refused to believe it. I felt my throat tighten. That strange mix of anger and disbelief. Outside, the sound of children laughing somehow made it worse. At that moment, I realized something brutal. They hadn't forgotten. They just didn't care enough. I stared out the window at my son, frosting on his cheek, passing out paper plates like the sweetest host in the world. My hands shook a little as I rinsed the knife. I'd never felt so invisible. When I stepped back out, Caleb ran to me. Mom, come sing again, please? And I did. I sang louder this time, maybe too loud. I clapped, laughed, smiled like everything was perfect, because he deserved that. He deserved joy, even if I had to build it alone. Later, after the last kid left, and the yard looked like a battlefield of balloons and melted popsicles, Caleb sat next to me on the rug with his new Lego set. Do you think Grandma's coming tomorrow instead? He asked. I wanted to tell him the truth, that Grandma was probably at brunch with my sister, sipping mimosas, pretending she hadn't broken another promise. But instead I said, Maybe, sweetheart, maybe she'll call later. He nodded, satisfied with that small lie, and went back to building his spaceship. I watched him for a long time, wondering when kids stop believing that adults mean what they say. When he fell asleep on the couch, Lego pieces still clutched in his hand, I picked up my phone again. The family chat was still quiet. But then a photo popped up from my sister's Instagram story. Brunch, my mother sitting beside her, sunglasses on, champagne flute raised. Caption, Self-care Saturday with my people. In the corner, my brother's arm draped across the back of the chair, a casual smile on his face. I just stood there holding my phone, my chest hollow. They hadn't forgotten. They'd chosen each other, over us. Over a 10-year-old boy who waited by the window all morning. I think something inside me shifted right then. Not broken? No, something more subtle. Like a door finally closing on the part of me that still believed they'd ever change. I cleaned the dishes, folded the banner, and packed the leftover cake. Every small motion felt ceremonial, like I was burying the last pieces of that illusion called family. When I finally sat down, the house was quiet. Too quiet. But for the first time, that silence didn't scare me. It felt honest. Because that day, I stopped waiting for them to show up. If you ask anyone in my family who keeps things together, they'll all say my name before you finish the question. Oh, that's Hannah, she handles it. It's almost funny now, the way they say it like a compliment, when it's really a curse. I was raised to be the fixer. Not because I wanted to, but because nobody else ever stepped up. When I was 12, my dad packed his stuff into a garbage bag and left after an argument that smelled like whiskey and rain. I remember my mom standing in the doorway, red-eyed, holding a cigarette she never lit. She looked at me and said, "Well, you're the adult now." Just like that. No ceremony, no warning. One minute I was a kid worried about middle school, the next I was the emotional janitor for the whole damn family. Mom always said I had good instincts. What she really meant was, "You'll clean up after me." When my brother Eric got his first DUI at 22, who bailed him out? Me. When my sister Mel decided to start her Etsy candle business but maxed out her credit cards, who covered her bills just for a month? Me. And when Mom's roof started leaking last winter, who pulled from her emergency savings? You can guess. It wasn't like I was rolling in money. I work in IT at a mid-sized logistics company. The kind where the coffee's terrible and the fluorescent lights flicker just enough to drive you insane. I fix networks, not people. But every time my phone buzzed, it was never a work ticket. It was another emergency. And I always answered, because that's what good daughters do, right? Last year, when Eric lost his job, Mom said, "You know, you could let him stay with you for a bit. He's family." I had a 9-year-old and a 2-bedroom townhouse. Still, I said yes. For 6 months, my fridge emptied faster than my patience. He'd play Xbox all day, complain about the system, and leave beer cans like breadcrumbs across my kitchen. When I asked him to start pitching in for groceries, he said, "You make more than me," as if that was a permanent excuse. One night, after tucking Caleb into bed, I walked into the living room and found Eric on my couch, laughing at some TikTok. I told him he needed to start looking for jobs seriously. He didn't even look up. "You always nag, Hannah. Relax, you love being in charge." That line stuck to my ribs like poison. Love being in charge? No, I was just the only one who didn't get the luxury of falling apart. When he finally moved out, after his girlfriend got pregnant, he didn't even say thank you, just texted, "Appreciate the hospitality, sis. You're a real one. A real one." Like I'd been part of a customer service transaction. And Mom, she acted like my sacrifices were just the natural order of things. "You've always been responsible," she'd say. "Not everyone's built like you." It sounded like praise, but it really meant keep doing it so I don't have to. I tried to set boundaries once, told her I couldn't cover her copay for another doctor visit. She went quiet on the phone for 10 seconds and then said, "You've changed." That's the Reed family's version of "you betrayed us." I ended up paying it anyway. Because guilt has a way of sounding like love when it comes from your mother. At some point, I stopped expecting gratitude and started measuring my worth in how useful I could be. If I wasn't fixing something, I felt anxious. My therapist, well, former therapist, because I stopped going when Mom said therapy was for people who can't handle life, once told me that fixing others was my way of staying needed. Maybe she was right, but what she didn't understand was how dangerous it feels to stop. Sometimes I daydream about moving somewhere far, Montana maybe, a small cabin where no one knew my name or my number. Then I'd remember Caleb, school, bills, and the endless text messages that made escape feel impossible. A few weeks before his birthday, I'd actually told my family I wanted to plan something small. I said, "No big gifts, no pressure, just a nice day together." Mom laughed and said, "You always overdo it, Hannah. Just order pizza and chill." But when I didn't invite them to host or decide anything, they acted offended, like I'd excluded them from a royal coronation. That's the thing. They don't want to help. They just want credit for meaning to. The Monday after the party, I went to work like nothing happened. My coworker, Denise, noticed I looked tired. "Big weekend?" she asked. I told her, "Yeah, kind of." She pressed, so I told her what happened. The empty chairs, the no-shows, the brunch photos. She froze, then said softly, "Girl, that's messed up. I'd go no contact after that." I laughed. "You say that like it's easy." She shook her head. "No, it's not easy, but neither is being everyone's backup plan." That line hit me like a quiet thunder, because that's exactly what I'd become, the family's backup plan. That night, while Caleb did homework, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my notebook. I started listing everything I'd done for them: money, favors, late-night rescues. The list stretched down the page like a grocery receipt that never ended. Then I added a second column, things they'd done for me. It was almost blank. I should have felt angry, but I didn't. I just felt empty, like realizing you've been holding your breath for 10 years and forgot what fresh air feels like. That's when the shift really began. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet decision forming under my skin. A promise to myself that the next time they came knocking, I wouldn't answer right away. Of course, I didn't know how soon that test would come. 3 days after the party, I was at work when my phone lit up with a group chat notification from my family. That already meant trouble. My stomach dropped before I even opened it. The first message was from my sister, Mel. "Hey Han, we're so excited for Olivia's Sweet 16 next month. We're locking in the venue this week, so if you could send over the $20,500 deposit by Friday, that'd be great." No please, no can you, just an expectation, like I was the family ATM again. I scrolled up. My mom had already replied with a thumbs up emoji and a thanks honey, as if I'd agreed. Then I noticed the PDF attached. It was the event flyer. Right at the bottom, under Platinum Sponsors, was my name and my photo, pulled straight from my LinkedIn profile. For a second, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they just needed a placeholder and forgot to ask. But the longer I stared, the more it burned. They didn't even ask. They just took my face, my name, my hard-earned stability, and plastered it under a party I didn't even know about. I texted back, "I didn't agree to sponsor anything. Please remove my name and picture." Mel replied instantly, "Whoa, chill. It's just a family event. You always support us." Then my brother Eric chimed in, "You make the most, sis. Don't be stingy. It's for Olivia." And then Mom, because of course she had to get the last word, "Don't start drama, Hannah. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. They always said that when they wanted me to shut up and pay up. My palms started sweating, and I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. I typed, deleted, typed again, until finally I just wrote, "Remove my name. I mean it." I left the chat. That night, after Caleb went to bed, I sat on the couch, laptop open, rereading the email chain from the event planner listed on the flyer. The woman's name was Rachel, from a fancy banquet hall downtown. Her signature had gold cursive fonts and an Instagram handle. I clicked it. Glossy pictures of chandeliers, sequin tablecloths, pink uplighting. I felt like an intruder scrolling through someone else's illusion. So I wrote to her. "Hi Rachel, my name is Hannah Reed. I've noticed my name and image listed as a platinum sponsor for the upcoming Sweet 16 event for the Johnson family. I did not authorize this and will not be contributing financially. Please remove all references to me immediately." She replied 15 minutes later. "Hi Hannah, thanks for clarifying. We'll update the materials right away." Short, professional, I almost laughed. It was the first time in years someone had respected my boundary without making me feel guilty. I shut my laptop, made some tea, and sat by the window. The street was quiet except for a dog barking somewhere down the block. For once I felt peace, that fragile, glass-like kind of peace that only comes when you finally stop explaining yourself. The next morning, though, I woke up to 6 missed calls from Mom. I didn't answer, then came the voicemail. "Hannah, what did you do? The venue called Mel. You embarrassed your sister. You always make everything about you. Call me back." I didn't. By noon, I got a text from Eric. "Nice move, you think you're better than us now?" I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "No, I just think I'm done being used." That was it. That was the match. 2 nights later, around 9 p.m., I was helping Caleb with his math homework when someone knocked on the door, hard, like the kind of knock that says this isn't friendly. I froze. Caleb looked up. "Are we expecting anyone?" he asked. I shook my head. I opened the door to find 2 police officers standing on my porch. My stomach went cold. "Ma'am, are you Hannah Reed?" the older officer asked. "Yes, what's going on?" He glanced down at his clipboard. "We received a welfare check request from a relative. They were concerned you might be having a mental health episode." For a second, I didn't even process the words. Then it hit me like a punch. They'd called the cops on me, my own mother, because I said no. I felt my throat tighten. "Do I look unstable to you?" I asked. My voice cracked halfway through. The younger officer looked uncomfortable. His eyes flicked toward the kitchen, where Caleb sat at the table with his workbook. "No, ma'am, we can see you're fine, but we're required to follow up." I nodded, stepping aside. "Come in then, see for yourself." They walked through my living room, clean, quiet, smelling like lemon cleaner and laundry detergent. The older officer asked if I was on any medication or if I'd had thoughts of harming myself. I almost laughed. "No, the only thing I'm harming is my family's control complex." He cracked a small smile. You'd be surprised how often that happens. After a few more questions, they told me I was good to go. Before leaving, the younger one looked back and said softly, "If this is about family, just document everything. People like that hate accountability." When they left, I stood in the doorway for a long time, the night air pressing cool against my skin. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from rage. They'd stooped that low, called the cops, tried to paint me as crazy. Caleb came up behind me, tugging my sleeve. "Mom, are you in trouble?" I knelt down, smoothing his hair. "No, baby, not anymore." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, opened a new folder on my computer, and named it Boundaries and Receipts. Instead, I started saving screenshots. The messages, the emails, even the police report confirmation. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming proof. For years, they'd gaslit me into thinking I was too sensitive or overreacting. But this time, I'd have the receipts. The next morning, I called a locksmith. The guy arrived within the hour. Tattooed arms, baseball cap, smelled faintly of WD-40 and cigarettes. He didn't ask questions, just whistled low when I told him, "Family drama." He said, "Say no more, happens all the time." When he was done, he handed me the new set of keys. "Fresh start," he said. I turned the key in the lock, felt it click. That tiny metallic sound that felt louder than thunder. That was the sound of control breaking. And as I stood there holding that key, I realized, for the first time in my life, they couldn't walk in anymore. Not into my house, not into my mind. The next morning, the sunlight coming through my blinds looked different. Maybe it was just me, but it felt cleaner, like it had finally passed through something toxic and found its way in. Caleb was sitting at the kitchen table, crunching cereal, humming some song from his favorite cartoon. For the first time in a long while, the house didn't feel heavy, just quiet, the good kind of quiet. 2 days later, I got the first text from Mom. "We need to talk, you're overreacting." I didn't answer. Then came the next one. "Your sister's party is this weekend. You should come and clear the air." Clear the air. That's family code for show up, pretend nothing happened, and let us rewrite the story. I didn't respond. But I knew curiosity would kill me eventually, so Saturday night, after putting Caleb to bed, I did what every rational person in the Midwest does when they want the truth. I opened Facebook. The first photo hit like deja vu, the Sweet 16 banner hanging half crooked, the same sequin backdrop from the flyer, my mom front and center in a shiny gold jacket. Except something was off. The comments were brutal. "Why are the lights out? No music? Was this before the real party started?" Then I saw Mel's caption. "You try to do something nice and people ruin it. Lesson learned." I didn't need to scroll far to figure out what happened. The venue had cut the power halfway through the event because the deposit never cleared. The DJ packed up early, and apparently, one of the parents from Olivia's school had to front the remaining balance just so the kids could get dinner. I should have felt guilty, but I didn't, not even a little. Instead, I felt relieved, like justice had finally clocked in for once. Sunday afternoon, Eli came over with takeout, and that look he gets when he's trying to read my mood. "So," he said, "how's family life in the Twilight Zone?" I laughed, for real this time. "Oh, they're thriving, in chaos." He leaned back, opened his carton of lo mein. "You know, I'm proud of you." "For what, changing locks?" "For finally believing you deserve peace." I didn't have a clever comeback for that. Just sat there, noodles half twisted on my fork, thinking about how foreign that word still felt. Peace. We ended up sitting on the porch, watching the sky shift to that soft pink you only get in small-town Ohio. Eli reached over, brushing his hand against mine. "You didn't close the door, Han. You just stopped letting them slam it in your face." I looked at him and smiled. "You have no idea how good that sounds." The next week, I started doing something I hadn't done in years. Saying no, tiny, simple no's that felt like small rebellions. When Mom called again, I let it go to voicemail. When Eric texted asking for a quick loan till payday, I replied with a single word: no. When Mel posted a vague Facebook quote about ungrateful people who forget where they came from, I didn't even screenshot it this time. I just closed the app. It's amazing how freeing silence can be. Around the same time, something strange started happening at work. I wasn't snapping at emails anymore. I wasn't carrying that invisible weight. My boss actually said, "You look lighter," I told her. "That's because I stopped being everyone's 911 hotline." She laughed, but she didn't know how literal that was. That Friday, Denise, my coworker who told me to go no contact, left a sticky note on my desk. "Lunch on me. You survived the purge." I laughed so hard I nearly snorted my coffee. For the first time in years, I felt like my life was mine again. No guilt, no manipulation, no forced apologies that always began with, "You know how your mother gets." Just me, my kid, my job, and the quiet hum of peace in the background. Then, out of nowhere, I got an email from the event planner, Rachel. The subject line, "Follow-up. Unauthorized sponsorship materials removed." I opened it expecting formality, but she'd added a little note. "I hope you're doing okay. Family boundaries are hard, but good for you for standing up." It made me tear up a little. This stranger, this woman I'd never met, somehow understood more than my own blood ever did. Later that week, Caleb came home from school with a drawing. It was of our house. He'd written, "Me and Mom, home ill safe." That one word, safe, hit harder than any therapy session ever could, because that's what all of this had really been about. Not revenge, not pride, just safety. Mom tried one last time the following Sunday, showed up at my door. I saw her through the window, hair done up, holding a tin of cookies like this with some 1950s peace offering. She knocked, then knocked again. I didn't answer. She stood there for maybe 2 minutes, then walked back to her car. But before she left, she slid an envelope under the door. I waited until she was gone to pick it up. Inside was a note, handwritten, shaky. "You've made your point. Families shouldn't turn on each other. Call me when you're done being stubborn." No apology, just blame, sugar-coated like always. I folded it once, twice, and dropped it into the trash. That night, I added a new file to my computer, next to boundaries and receipts. This one was called Peace Achieved. Inside, I saved the email from Rachel, Caleb's drawing, and a photo of our new lock. It sounds silly, but it felt like proof that healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it's just the absence of chaos. I used to think family was forever. Now I think pieces. And between the two, I'll pick peace every time. It's been 6 months since the lock changed, and I still remember the sound, that sharp metallic click that echoed like a full sentence after years of unfinished thoughts. Life didn't suddenly turn perfect after that, but it finally started to make sense. The first few weeks were strange. I'd still wake up expecting chaos. A voicemail from Mom, a text from Eric asking for a quick favor, or some passive-aggressive post from Mel about fake people. But the notifications never came. My phone was quiet, almost too quiet at first. Then one morning, as I packed Caleb's lunch, I realized that silence wasn't punishment, it was peace. The kind I used to think only existed in other people's lives. We started doing little things just for us. Saturday mornings became adventure breakfasts. Pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, extra whipped cream, and Caleb insisting we rate each one like we were food critics on TV. Sundays were for walks by the lake, no phones allowed. And every evening before bed, I'd read him a chapter of some silly book and tuck him in, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. It's funny, for years, I thought being a good mother meant holding everything together, even if it meant breaking myself apart. Turns out, kids don't need perfection, they just need peace. One evening, I was folding laundry when the doorbell rang. My heart skipped, but when I looked through the peephole, it wasn't who I expected. It was Aunt Carol, the family's black sheep who'd moved to Arizona years ago after a massive fight with Mom. She smiled when I opened the door. "Heard you finally got smart," she said, holding up a pie. Figured that deserved dessert. We sat on the porch, eating pecan pie straight from the tin, no plates, no pretense. Carol told me she'd gone no contact with the family a decade ago. "Best decision I ever made," she said. "Took me a year to stop feeling guilty. Took me 2 to realize I didn't miss them. I missed the version of them I kept hoping for." That line hit deep, because that was exactly it. I hadn't been clinging to my family. I'd been clinging to the idea of them, the one that never really existed outside of birthdays and forced smiles. Carol looked at me for a long moment. "You've got that look," she said. "The one people get when they finally stop apologizing for choosing themselves." I laughed, wiping a tear that surprised me. I guess it's about time. Later that night, after she left, I sat at my desk and opened the Peace Achieved folder. I added a new file, a photo I'd taken that evening, me, Carol, and Caleb on the porch, laughing with pie crumbs on our shirts. The caption I typed under it was simple: proof that peace runs in the family too, if you let it. A few weeks later, something small but unexpected happened. Mom sent a card in the mail. Not a text, not a guilt trip, a real handwritten card. The handwriting was shaky, but the message was short. I hope you're happy. I mean that. I didn't cry. I just sat there, letting the words settle. I didn't rush to respond, didn't analyze what she really meant. I just smiled. Maybe she was changing, or maybe she wasn't. Either way, I'd stop needing her approval to be okay. At work, things got better too. My manager offered me a promotion, something I never thought I'd have the bandwidth to take on before. You've got leadership energy, she said. People trust you. I almost laughed. Yeah, I've had practice. But this time, leadership didn't mean being a fixer. It meant boundaries. It meant knowing when to say, that's not my problem to solve. And honestly, that felt more powerful than any title could. On Caleb's next birthday, I didn't throw a huge party. No banners, no fancy cake. Just a backyard BBQ with a few neighbors, the smell of grilled corn, and kids laughing in the grass. Halfway through, Caleb tugged my sleeve and said, Mom, this is perfect. And for once, it really was. After everyone left, I sat alone on the porch as the sun dipped low, painting everything gold. I thought about all the years I'd spent chasing acceptance, believing love had to be earned with sacrifice, money, or silence. But sitting there with the soft buzz of crickets and the faint laughter still hanging in the air, I realized something simple but life-changing. Love isn't debt, it's choice. That's what I want Caleb to grow up knowing. That saying no isn't cruel. That protecting your peace isn't selfish. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Not in anger, but in grace. I looked down at the new lock on my door, still gleaming under the porch light. I twisted it once, just to hear that familiar click, and I swear it still sounded like freedom. If I've learned anything from this whole mess, it's that peace doesn't come from fixing people. It comes from finally realizing you don't have to. For years, I thought love meant endurance, that family loyalty meant sacrifice no matter the cost. But real love, the kind that lasts, doesn't drain you, it steadies you. It doesn't demand silence, it listens. The truth is, some bridges aren't meant to be crossed again, and that's okay. You can love people deeply and still decide not to let them walk through your door anymore. Setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel, it makes you clear. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for yourself, and for others, is to stop participating in your own exhaustion. As folks say around here, you can't pour from an empty cup. It took me a long time to understand that saying no isn't rejection, it's protection. Because when you finally stop trying to earn love through pain, you make space for the kind of love that doesn't need payment, peace, trust, laughter that doesn't have to be forced. So if you're listening to this and you're tired of being the fixer, I hope you know this. You deserve rest, respect, and room to breathe. Walk away if you have to. Heal loudly or quietly, but heal on your own terms. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to draw a line with someone you love? What did you learn about yourself afterward? Share your story in the comments below. And if this one resonated with you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that cut deep and heal slow. Until next time, I hope your heart finds the kind of quiet that feels like home.